All
Good
right.
afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We have a couple of people still signing on, so we'll give it just one more minute just until we have everyone up to date and let everyone sign in. Okay, everyone. Think we'll be ready to start. We got the good to go, Juliana?
Yeah, I think we're good to
Okay.
start. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, today's webinar is going to be about starting or scaling a sustainable virtual practice. My name is Tina Gill, and I'm a lawyer and a practice area consultant at LexisNexis Canada. And we also have Juliana. Let you go ahead.
Hi, I'm Juliana Saxberg. I'm a lawyer and I'm also a practice area consultant with LexisNexis. And I'm going to get us started with land acknowledgement. So I wrote this land acknowledgement. There's somebody that I follow on social media that's an Indigenous activist, and they said, stop asking me for help writing your land acknowledgement. If you really care about land acknowledgement, then write your own land acknowledgement. And that's part of the effort that we make for truth and reconciliation. So that's what I've done here. I'm coming to you from just north of Ottawa in Quebec, which is the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. I appreciate that because this is a virtual presentation that everybody's in somewhere different. So I encourage you to have your own acknowledgement of the lands. I do want to point out that I'm grateful to the generations who stewarded this land and these waters for time immemorial. And I take this opportunity to acknowledge the harms caused by colonization and affirm my commitment to truth and reconciliation for Canada's girls, which of course includes a commitment to justice for missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people. Thanks.
Thank you so much for that, Juliana. We have a great, amazing list of panelists today. We have Paula Melo, who's from Melo Carasacaro LLP. We have Busui Roso, who is from Roso Law Professional Corporation. We have Lisa Felstein, who's a principal lawyer from Lisa Felstein Law Office. And we have Amy Group, who's also a business coach lawyerist. Okay, so what we're going to do today, we're going to start the discussion off by the first topic of scaling or building a virtual practice for work-life balance. So we're going to start off with Paula, who's going to kind of give you her experience of how she started off and what she learned and what type of mistakes to avoid when you are starting off your own practice as a solo practitioner.
Okay, hi everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. Like Tina introduced me, my name is Paula Melo and I'm located in Toronto. I'm going to go very briefly into what my story is, but I basically got called to the bar in 2016. I've been working in the field of immigration since 2008, but officially got called then. I worked in different areas, and then for some time I was at the Center for Spanish Speaking People in the legal clinic there. And then thereafter, I decided to go on my own in October 2017. And I started Melo Law, and I was completely by myself. And then I just focused on immigration because it's what I kind of been doing prior from 2008 till then. Just myself, I did absolutely everything. And then I kind of used the different softwares or that I had kind of utilized over the years in my experience working for other lawyers and sort of grab what worked for me or what I thought would work best for me as the time went. Then I partnered up with my business partner, Gloria Carascaro, towards the end of 2019. And that's when our joint practice came together. And then we continue doing immigration. We sort of have touched on other bases because it does intertwine with business law and our community. We serve primarily the Spanish speaking communities. So wills and estates and just different, we're kind of like a point of contact for everybody. So I usually take out my Rolodex and I'm like, okay, this person might be best suited for you, or when we're working with employers. And then from there on, when we started our practice together, as you all know, 2020 hit. And then the pandemic came in, which brought everything to a halt and forced all of us to change the way we did business. I'm not, I usually say I'm really old, but I'm not that old realistically. So but I'm an old soul. And I've had to, when we're talking about technology and scaling a business, I've kind of had to combine two worlds for myself. When I say I'm old school, I mean, like, I like paper, sticky notes, like I jot everything, but I also have learned to see the benefit as the pandemic came in, to know that there's a benefit to using technology. But I've also had to work on who my audience is and who my clientele is. And I work with people that are very techy, so it's easy, a lot of emails, and we do I think pretty much most areas nowadays, we're all doing everything online. The governments have transitioned to online processes. The paperwork is kind of like not really, at least in immigration, they've really tried to transition everything electronically, which is great, but has brought a lot of challenges for when we deal with individuals that don't know how to use email, that don't know how to use portals. The portals crash everything. So we've slowly have kind of built, and I would say my practice, or our practice right now, is like half physical and still kind of like the old way of doing things, and then the new school, which is more like online and a virtual practice, which has allowed us, and I kind of had a virtual practice all along, if I think about it, because I have clients that are all over the world, so we would use methods of communicating, but now it's kind of forced us more. And I know some colleagues do run a complete virtual practice. I still have an office where people can come in if they want to. But I would say that as of today, about 80% of my practice really is virtual. When I'm doing client facing or just actual legal work, it's on a virtual space. But my old school kind of me, I need space for, like, I need to come in. My brain works a certain way. The working from home never worked. I was really lucky. Everybody else worked from home. So my home was my actual office, and we kept it through the pandemic. So I think everybody has to kind of figure out what works for them as they go. I can tell you before I wrap up, because I know we have a lot to talk about in a short period of time, but in terms of mistakes to avoid or things, I think oftentimes it's a trial and error. I know that I would join this, and even in preparing for this, I felt like I don't have a lot to offer, or I would learn from everybody else. And I think that I had to step back and look at it and say, you know, I've had a certain experience, and we gotta not compare ourselves, and that it's okay. We're all trying to figure it out. And as time evolves and things evolve and your practice evolves, you have to readjust and see what works for you. So that's me for now, and I'll hand it over to, I don't know if you'll introduce them, Tina, or.
Yeah, I'll go ahead. Thank you so much, Paula, for sharing your story. Up next, we have Vuya, Roso.
Okay, thank you, Tina, and thanks, Paula. Hello, everyone. I'm Vuya Roso. I practice, I have a sole practice in Guelph, Ontario, by the name of Roso Law Professional Corporation, which I started 8 years ago. So law happens to be my second career. So I kind of knew that I wasn't gonna, go do 9 to 5 in a big law firm and stuff. Nothing wrong with all of that. But I just know myself, and I've grown up enough to know what I like, what I don't. And also I know, because to have a sole practice and a practice of your own, you have to be a hard worker. So, I know I'm not afraid to work 7 days a week if necessary, late into the night. And also, actually, when I started, to get clients and all of that, I would meet people at their homes, or maybe at, Starbucks and places like that. Though you have to be very careful about confidentiality and have all those rules at the back of your mind. So that was what I did. And also, I have some other interests. I've been teaching at the university for 12 years. So having a practice on my own allowed me the flexibility. However, very busy. It's like you're working 24/7, 365 days a year. But as time goes by, you get to take it easy a little bit. And like Paula, I still like to have the paper component. So I'm not completely 100% virtual. So I have my office that I go to in Guelph. I live in Kitchener now. And then maybe 2 days a week, I go to the office to meet clients and, to work. And when I'm in the office, I'm able to concentrate a little bit more. But I also have an office set up at my home where I can work. And then through COVID, we did all our court presentations and everything virtually. So that was very helpful as well. And so, I practice in the areas of family law and real estate. And also I do some other things like wills and estate and all this other stuff. And I know how I got started with clientele-based build-up was my wife had a call to the bar party for me, invited all my friends. And then right after that, they started coming to me for wills and power of attorneys and gradually to real estate files and sales and purchase and all of that. And that was how I got started, really. And then what I've learned so far is when you're there for people at their time of need, legally speaking, they will remember you when they have some other things. So this is what I did with my practice. I make sure that I represent you well. I'm accessible, I communicate. You're never gonna have to worry, oh, I don't know what we're doing now on this file. No, I keep you up to date. Okay, and so I noticed that people will remember you when they have some other issues, even things you don't practice, they will bring it to you and they trust whoever you refer them to. So that was how we pretty much, I got started. And so I have a lot of clients referrals, second time, third timers, and so on. And in some cases, I became the lawyer for, someone's extended family. They think I do everything. They have criminal matters, they're calling me, so I have to refer them to people. And another one is don't be afraid when you're just starting out to reach out to other lawyers, mentors, people that have practiced longer than you. I noticed in my 8 years of practicing on my own that a lot of lawyers, 90% of lawyers are usually happy to help people, especially those that are just coming up. And I see myself doing that right now too. Mind you, you have some new lawyers that get on your nerves. They want to ask you a question and they haven't done any research on it. Make sure you're up to speed on what you're asking, and that makes it very easy for whoever is your mentor. And I also will reach out to my colleagues, people like Tina and some other people like that that I grew up with in the legal profession. And another strange one is I've developed some friendship, legally speaking, with some opposing counsel. So let's say I did a file against this person representing someone else 6 years ago. Now we're good friends. So I can call them up if I have any other issues and so on. We can just talk things over. So all of that is very important. So quickly to get on mistakes to avoid. In my case, don't ever be too desperate for getting a fee and so forth, especially when you're just getting started and everything is really tough, that you forget to follow the rules of professional conduct. It's going to cost you big time. So say, for example, you did a file for someone, say real estate file, commercial, and you got $2,500 fee plus HST. That's not compared to the $100,000 you're going to spend if you have to be, if the Law Society gets on your case and you have to defend yourself. So don't forget that. So I have had to move away from files, especially when you have clients that are not listening to you. They're pretty much indirectly wanting you to do things that are contrary to the rules. I just walk away from it. Don't be afraid. Don't be too, don't panic too much about, oh, where's the next money gonna come from, that you take that on. And also don't miss the warning signs. I've fallen into some of these myself. I've had 2 clients that I regretted. From day one that I met with them, I knew I shouldn't take them on. But I thought, I could do this and, they'll be good, But eventually it was really bad. One of them, I got them to fire me, talk to them and say, it's not working out between you and I. You wanted me to do all these things that are really not correct for me to do, and I cannot. So why don't you just get rid of me? That would be great. And then sometimes you have to be ready to give back their retainer, give back their money to them to avoid troubles. And then you also have to decide. A good friend of mine told me when I first started, he said, hey, Busui, you have to decide whether you're running a charity or a law practice. Okay, so don't be afraid to tell people what you're charging them, and don't be afraid to go after them to collect your money. A lot of clients know they have to pay for the services they're getting, but some other clients know, depending, on the community and the kind of people you're dealing with, they may think, oh, he's a lawyer, he has a lot of money anyway, he doesn't need mine. No, but I gave you service, so you have to pay me for the service. So you have to set that expectation the get-go. So those are things, and also you have to decide the type of structure to have for your practice. For me, a corporation works best for me, and that was what I did. So for some people, it may just be a sole proprietorship and so on. You have to talk to your tax lawyers and all these other people who are going to help you and give you some understanding around them. So I don't want to go past my time limit. So I will.
That was really
so
great.
Thank
I
you
love
so
how
much.
you're like a community lawyer. And I want to point out, if you ever decide you want to go ahead and try to become a judge, one of the things that you have to do is ask for a reference from somebody that you've appeared against. So you're already doing so great in that regard. That's awesome. So being a community lawyer, you're helping all of the people in your community with their different things. But Lisa, I understand you have what I would call maybe a more niche practice. I want to ask you to jump in and tell us your practice story.
Very niche. And I'm a big advocate for being very niche. That will come through, I think, in my comments today. So hello, everyone. My name is Lisa Valdstein. My office is in Markham, Ontario. I'm a healthcare and fertility lawyer, but my health law practice is a bit unique. So by way of background, I started off as summer articling and junior associate at a health law firm in Toronto. The clients were mostly hospitals and other healthcare organizations, long-term care homes, very institutional clients. While I was there, I started to notice that health professionals had lawyers, the institution had lawyers, often the patients had lawyers, and there was nobody representing family caregivers. And there were a few times at tribunals where I saw they were represented by somebody who the tribunal was even confused about their role. And there were some times where they just clearly needed legal advice. There was nobody offering that to them. And a few times, a few potential referrals came my way. I had to send them elsewhere because we had a conflict of interest. We represented so many hospitals and I had nowhere to send to those individuals. So the pieces started to fall into place that it seemed like there was a gap. And I started to wonder, is nobody serving family caregivers because this is a terrible idea? Is it because you can't charge as much as hospitals, or maybe just no one's tried it? I wasn't sure. So I decided to take the leap. I was only 26 and I was a little shy of 2 years post-call. So it was pretty early in my career to go on my own, but lower risk in that I did not have children. And so I thought, I hope to have children one day. Now is at least a time that I can tolerate the risk. I have a partner who has an income. So it was kind of a calculated risk to go on my own. So early, and now I'm coming up on my 11-year anniversary of my firm. It was 2013. And one thing that was great about that time is paperless was a thing, but it was new. My only practice management options I had all of two options to pick from: the paperless or the sort of older desktop version, or the kind of new, not paperless, cloud-based. So it was a little less overwhelming at the time. And one of the things I've learned is that when you're starting a practice, you can really build it around yourself. In so many ways, I am my brand. I don't need to change my tone of how I show up on Twitter or LinkedIn. My brand colors are a bit vibrant. I am my brand. And I did a lot of self-reflection and the Myers-Briggs personality quizzes and reading books and things to try and assess where my strengths and weaknesses are. And I built a firm around my personality, my values, my firm values, and my values are kind of overlap with each other. My calendar, because I have a first responder spouse, my calendar and when I can see clients, it's all built around kind of what works for me and what I can do for clients, and also who my clients are. Because I'm so niche with health law, my focus is family caregivers, and the fertility law is the other part with caregivers. That gives so much direction. And I think we'll talk a little more today about that, but it gives a lot of direction that answers my questions about where do I do marketing and finding my clients and flat fees, and all the practice decisions that I've made come from this question of how do I best serve family caregivers. So being very niche and building a business around kind of my personality and what works for me is something I really would suggest doing if you're thinking about starting on your own.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Like I was gonna say, that's a really interesting niche, though. You don't see that a lot out there, to be honest. So a focus like that would be really great for new lawyers if they find something that they're really more interested in. So, and also your branding is great as well. Okay, and up next we have Amy. And before Amy introduces herself in terms of her discussion on, mistakes to avoid, she's also going to jump into the second topic of discussing how to build a book of business, how to have effective client management, and managing bad client behavior.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for having me here today on this panel. My name is Amy Grube, and I was a practicing lawyer for about 15 years. I practiced in big law, and then I ran my own practice as well. It was a solo. I was doing it from home before the pandemic as well. And during that time, when I was running my own practice, I had a lot of lawyers in my community who would reach out to me and ask, how did you start your practice? How are you doing what you're doing? Can you show me how to do it? And so I said, sure, like I'll show you, I'll teach you. And so that's how I got into this coaching and consulting business. So I was practicing law and I was coaching and consulting. And then I just loved helping lawyers start and scale their practices so much that I do that 100%. So I'm a non-practicing lawyer right now, and I work for a company called Lawyerist, and we have a ton of resources online for people who are looking to start their practice. So in terms of, things that I've learned and mistakes that I've made, I think everyone has brought up really, really great points. And one thing I want to kind of piggyback on was Vuya was talking about mentors and reaching out to other people in your community and asking questions. And I agree with him that lawyers are willing to give their time and answer questions. And sometimes as that person who's asking those questions, don't be afraid to ask that lawyer, how can I help you? And you might think, oh, I'm a new lawyer, how can I help them? But you may have certain things you might know about. Lots of times you might know a lot about technology. Maybe you're really up on TikTok and the lawyer you're talking to has no idea about it. You can have a conversation and teach them something about something they don't know about. You can ask them, what's their ideal client? Who is that person? So if you ever find a client who's looking for legal services, you can refer work to them. So you do have a lot to give back to other lawyers and law firms who kind of help you on your way. And then in terms of mistakes, this kind of segues into our next topic, which is getting into a little bit about your ideal client and branding. And there's a whole bunch of things we're going to talk about. And it definitely piggybacks on what Lisa's talking about and niching down. Because when I was running my practice, I was invited to go speak. It was a paid opportunity to go to Toronto. They paid, my travel, my meals. It was really exciting. It was my first paid speaking gig. So I was pumped. And I got into the room. I had practiced like forever. I think it was a 1-hour presentation. And I got up there, I did my presentation. I was like, this was amazing. And then after that, no one reached out to me. I got no work from it. Nothing came of it. So I was reflecting afterwards and I realized it was not my right audience. So I was speaking in front of a group of people who were employees of a company. And as a lawyer, I was looking for people who wanted to hire me as individuals to help them with their business. So I was totally in the wrong room. So it was I don't want to say it was a waste of time, but all that time I spent traveling, prepping, speaking in the hotel, I could have been marketing my own practice to get some work or to be doing the legal work that I already had. So that takes us into the next conversation and really piggybacks on what Lisa's talking about in terms of figuring out your niche, finding who your ideal client is. And when you're first starting out, finding your niche can be a little bit tricky because maybe you're just starting and you have no idea. So it's trial and error. It's figuring out what you like doing. It's taking a bit of a leap and making guesses, and you can always refine it. But in terms of understanding your ideal client, what I mean by that is really dig deep. So who is your ideal client? What's their gender? What's their age? How much money do they make? Where do they work? Are they married? Do they have kids? Really get into who this person is.
And then what you can do with all that information is, as you're making decisions about your business, you're thinking about your ideal client. So some people will even name their ideal client. So they'll say, my ideal client is David. He's 35 years old. He's in the tech industry. You can go on and on. So when you're thinking about your marketing, so let's say a speaking opportunity comes across your desk. Okay, do I want to take this? Is David going to be at this event? Is this somewhere where he's hanging out? And if it's not, don't waste your time. So find the locations where David is. Is he online? Is he in Facebook groups? Is he on LinkedIn? Do his kids play soccer with your kids? And that's another thing I want to mention as well, is often I will hear lawyers will be in casual settings with people or getting to know people, and they're introducing themselves and they'll say, my name is Amy. I am a wills and estates lawyer in Toronto. I work with individuals with who make more than X number of dollars. So the reason for that is the person you may not be talking to might not be your ideal client, but they might know someone who is, and you're so much more referable when they know your practice area. Like, I know Lisa is a fertility lawyer, like just based on what she was saying. So anything kind of fertility related, I would reach out to her. And if she's not the right person, she's in that field, in that industry, and she can refer people that way. So that's what I wanted to say about that. And then in terms of retainer agreements, engagement letters, like Basui was saying, you're providing legal services. You enter into this agreement with people and they need to pay. So it's so important to have all of that information in a legal document, in a contract that sets out all your whole scope of services. So I could go on and on, but I'm not going to. So I'll turn it over to you, Juliana.
That's awesome, Amy. Thank you for that. The only thing I want to say too is I went through the process of like defining my ideal client maybe 4 to 6 times over the last 2 years. That's one thing I love about being a solo. I can rebrand anytime. I recently said, I don't want to take any more of this case because I haven't had great experiences with that. So I think, give yourself permission to change your mind. And I think it's also important for people listening to understand that we all did make big mistakes in the beginning, right? And that includes, like Vuya was talking about, accepting that wrong client or whatever. Before I turn it over to another one of the panelists, I just want to say, keep those questions coming on the Q&A. We're monitoring it. If we can answer them live, we'll do so. Otherwise, we're going to get to them at the end. Paula, we haven't heard from you in a bit. Do you want to jump in on building that book of business?
Of course. So yes, building a book of business, it works differently for everybody. I'll say personally, and Basui spoke about this, is client referrals. I've been now in business for 7 years, and I know that there was a question in the comments about like, do I do advertising? Do I do this? Do I do that? To be honest with you, I think in the last 7 years, we only did advertisement once, and in part was of what Amy was saying about knowing who your ideal client was. And since we're focusing more in like in the Spanish speaking community, we threw an advertisement there, and not because we needed to, we kind of bought, and I say we, my business partner and I bought into, okay, maybe we need to advertise, we need to grow the business. But we haven't really had the need, and it's really come with word of mouth. And one of the things of building your book of business, not only delivering a great service, which is what is going to develop that book of business, because somebody's going to say, oh, go to this person or go to that person. I can tell you a lot of my clients often comes from, I don't know if it reflects in other communities, but there's all these bunch of Facebook groups, Latinos or Colombians in Toronto or whatever the case may be. And oftentimes they'll say, your name came up. And building your reputation builds your book of business. The other key thing, and I was at an event last week and they brought this up, and I really think it works in terms of part of your advertisement, and I'm gonna kind of still steal those tidbits, is I think a good website, and maybe some of my other panelists might differ, but I usually kind of step into, if I were looking for a professional, what do I look at? Do they have an online presence? Do they have, what does their website look like? I'm not gonna go too much into like having the perfect website, because I can tell you it's one of the things that I'm working on right now to keep up with it, because it's supposed to be like something more lively and it changes continuously. So keep it up to date. I know I'm bad at that and we're working on that. But the other big thing is Google reviews. Get your clients to put that, like they speak for themselves. When you start working with somebody, you build that trust, but that kind of gives you a step ahead of people knowing who you are. So I would say that in terms of building the book of business, effective client management, I'll just switch to that, and retainers. I like one of the biggest things I've heard over like the years of when I was a student and then an articling student, and every conversation I've ever had, the biggest complaint about lawyers is that apparently we do not communicate, or we don't communicate well enough, or that the client didn't know X or Y, Z. And even when you do communicate, because it's one of my biggest things, like I'll even tell clients like, look, I'm very busy. I'm a human being. I'm not a robot. I have other responsibilities. I also have a life. Like, well, I'll sit there and I'll tell them what my clear expectations of communication, documentation. My retainer like sets out everything. And one of the things from retainers is I've revised my retainer like about 6-7 times. And each time I get more detailed, because it gives me that kind of shield to go back and say, well, it's here, you signed it. And so it gives a little bit of protection, but also sets expectations for the client. And that's really important. I have an automatic response, which I kind of find it's a bit annoying, but it's necessary, because that way clients know you're not going to get a response from me in at least, and I now had to increase it to 72 hours. And even then I tell clients in my consult, and whenever I speak with somebody, is like, look, like I'm very busy. I'll get to it. I prioritize, but rest assured you will get an answer from me. And it's really funny because oftentimes, even though they get an automatic reply, I will get a phone call and a WhatsApp message. And because my community, we use WhatsApp a lot. I don't know if other communities, and they're like, did you get that message? I'm like, didn't you get that automatic reply? It means I got it. So it's just communication, and like setting boundaries, like all of those things are really important. And trust me, I've been doing this for a really long time, and I'm still learning. My biggest thing for 2023 was learning how to say no, which is one of the great things, I guess, from a solo perspective. Like everybody else said, you can pick and choose your clients and know your worth. I know that when we're starting out, and I always say I could be the poster child for imposter syndrome, because I'm constantly questioning my ability to do things. Do I know? And I think in part that's what helps me be good at my job, because I'm constantly checking that I'm doing things right, but it can also be detrimental. So I think it's finding a balance, that it's important, and to know that you have to, if you don't, there is a quote somewhere, I can't remember the exact words, but people will treat you how you let them treat you. And that means like in all aspects of your life, including your business, and giving yourself value. If you don't value yourself, nobody else is going to do that for you. And I've learned that. I was really sick in the last year. And I literally had to message clients like almost with no voice from the hospital, being like, I'm dying. Like, we've already been doing things like, let me heal myself so I can be there for you. So communication is great. A big challenge, and I know that there's different areas, and I'll stop because I know there's so much to talk about. I don't want to give everybody else, but I know that from a lot of talks that I go to, because I'm in immigration, I'm always wondering about fees and how do you charge people? And it's still like an ongoing thing. But in immigration, most of us do block fees. And it's just like getting those retainers. I know there was like a discussion earlier with ourselves about trust accounts and being like keeping up. There's a lot of like law society rules in Ontario and how to keep up with those. I think if you secure money up front, you're going to secure payment. Otherwise, you're going to end up frustrated because you end up working for free. And then it builds a little bit of a resentment. And managing bad client behavior. My rule nowadays is I'm very upfront. I tell people how it is, things, and the second that they disrespect, and oftentimes they'll disrespect my staff more. They'll get at like with a lot of attitude. And when they get with me, they're very sweet. But I put a stop to it because my staff is important to me and they're owed as much respect as I am owed. Not because I'm a lawyer, it just means we're all equal, and that's one thing I will not tolerate. And I'll tell clients, like, you cannot mistreat somebody. This is respectful, and we're in a relationship, and there's got to be trust, and we can't trust each other, then this is not gonna work. So oftentimes you just do, it's not me, it's not you, it's me kind of thing to get out of it easier. But it's important to have those things. I think I covered pretty much of all those points, but I'll hand it back. And
Thank you. Thank you so much, Paula. No, I like how you mentioned the importance of having an automatic message set out, because clients think lawyers are sitting there 24 hours, they can respond to you right away. So that you already have the expectation set out there that, you will get a response within 1 to 3 business days. So I think that's really important to have. Okay, up next, Pusui, would you like to go ahead?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Paula. That was very good. So let me begin by saying that at the start of your practice, for me, I pretty much went where practice took me or led me, okay, because it's so difficult to identify who your ideal clients should be, all right? After a while, yes, you can. Now we can. So my background, my past life was in HR. So I actually thought when I was starting my practice that I was going to be, have a niche, specialized employment lawyer, because that will come to me naturally because of my past education and background. But I found out after that wasn't going to be the case. So I set up with legal aid. And legal aid had me on. It was very tough. You guys that worked for legal aid or still working for them, great. They do great work and everything, but the pay is kind of a little bit low. And sometimes you have to beg and crawl and cry to get more hours or more money and stuff. But I found out though that my name being on legal aid, my last name being a Roso I got a lot of calls from legal aid, even people that are not qualified for legal aid, but needed family lawyer calling me. And I would say, hey, where did you hear from about us? And they say on legal aid. So that worked out. I still have some calling me till today. Obviously, legal aid doesn't take your name off if you no longer taking their files, I guess. So that was good that way. And also, I like what Paula said about retainer agreement. I work on my retainer agreements all the time too. And I've had situations where there was a client that I represented. They were doing a separation agreement. That was the retainer agreement I signed with them, flat rate, specific only to negotiating and coming up with a separation agreement. And then they decided to go on full blown to bring an application for family law. And they're telling me, I already paid you. And I said, no, you haven't already paid me. I need a new retainer for my trust account for me to proceed to bring an application for you. And then they said, yeah, ready. I said, no, I sent you my retainer agreement. You signed it and your signature was witnessed. And the guy said, no, I never read it. And I said, well, I explained it to you on Zoom, each line. And then, so you have clients like that. So that was the client that I find a way to get him to fire me and stuff. So also retainer agreement, when you start in now, you can get all of those from Law Pro. I consider that to be very good. And then you have to work on it. And that's another thing you see with some new lawyers. They want to get precedent from somebody and just go ahead and use it anyhow. No, you have to do your due diligence, look through it, make it customized to what you're doing or what you have at hand. And also, I'm just keeping to make sure I don't repeat everything that Paula said, because she already gave a very good point on all of this stuff. So getting paid, I know at the start I had credit card payment. I know that's very convenient for people, but my fees to maintain that with TD was getting too high. So I thought it wasn't good for me anymore. So I got rid of it. And then I would get people to give me personal check, bank drafts, and e-transfer. So that's really working really well these days for me, e-transfer. And then because I practice real estate and family law, I couldn't work for you on contingency by the rules. So I have to have a trust account where you can give me the retainer. I put that in and we top that up as time proceeds. Another thing you have to be mindful of is don't continue to work endlessly without having your client to top up your trust account, because you get into the groove of it. And sometimes when you just are getting started, you want to help them so badly that you feel like it is your case. No, it's not your case. You're the lawyer who's helping your client to achieve their goals in the case. So we really have to define that, especially when kids are involved and all of that. You get a little bit passionate, but don't be passionate beyond making sure your retainer or trust account is topped up by the client. So you have to bring that up to them, and then you don't just drop it on them on the day you're going for emotion or something. You have to build them up to it, letting them know. So by now I built the last work we did, and now you only have 1,005 left. I'm going to need additional such and such. So our communication must be very clear so that clients will understand exactly what we need from them and so forth. I think
Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much, Ms. Vuya. I think it's really important when it comes to retainers. And if you're doing a limited scope retainer, always know that if you're jumping onto another topic or you're dealing with court, you always update that retainer as you go so that there's no confusion. All right, so up next we'll have Lisa Feldstein. And Lisa, we will actually just jump into the topic of using technology to build processes for peak efficiency and ease.
Certainly, and I'll notice somebody in the questions asked about my virtual background. This is the paint on the wall.
You're full time. Yeah, thanks. So yeah, you're monitoring the questions. People are really wanting to hear more about tech and scaling. If you can work any of that in.
Absolutely. So I love talking about technology and automations, and I use AI a lot. So I can say a little bit of that, but then I want to mention something else that kind of ties into that, but a slightly different direction. So for me, because my clients are people who are usually financially strapped, family caregivers, there's usually a lot of financial sacrifice if you're being a caregiver for someone. And fertility law, the clients are paying so much money to access fertility treatment. That money is also tight. So for me, the technology really feeds into this question of how can I keep my services affordable and still make a living? And a big part of that answer for me has been technology and flat fees. Flat fees, so it's transparent and predictable upfront. They know, can they afford me? And I get the money in trust, and there's no concerns about not getting paid or them feeling like the bill's higher than they were expecting. Some files once in a while fall outside of that, but the majority is flat fee and money upfront. And that comes more easily when you are focused on a specific practice area. If you have an area, these are the range of services, you can become an expert, you can have systems, checklists, templates, automation, and also more junior people actually doing some of the work. One mistake that I made earlier in my practice was thinking my first hire had to be a lawyer. I've since learned there were a lot of things, and I had articling students. I was giving tasks to articling students. I realized a really smart person who did not go to law school could also do these tasks, especially if I have good systems in place and set them up for success. And so finding ways to use having checklists and systems, and there's a book called Getting Things Done. I found that very impactful in terms of thinking through before jumping into what technology do you need. That book was helpful in thinking through what are your systems, what is your process, and plan out what you need and what the flow of information should be before you go technology shopping. Sometimes planning things out in advance will help answer the question of what technology you need. Automations can be great, but if you're kind of just doing them for the sake of doing them, they may not really help your practice. So thinking about, have a plan first of what you actually want to achieve, what tasks take a lot of time, what tasks are you repeating, what information are you saying over and over. One rule that we have is if you're saying the same thing over and over, we need to figure out a way to avoid that. So we've addressed that through infographics and YouTube videos. So we have a lot of YouTube videos now, over 100, it's a library. So at the end of a file, I send a summary to a client. and include some links to YouTube videos, which also help people find us, but so I don't have to repeat what I said in the meeting. And infographics we often share at the beginning when somebody reaches out. Here's what the surrogacy process looks like. Here's the 5 steps. So we aren't saying the same thing over and over, and our time is being used more effectively by not repeating ourselves. So any sort of repetition is often a good signal of maybe we should, whether it's technology or, I mean, infographics not really technology, you can, but what can you put in place to avoid repeating yourself? The other piece I wanted to share that I don't really speak about so much, but I think in light of how expensive everything is, getting it, I think a lot of lawyers could be doing more to have services that aren't the traditional service model. So in my firm, we have online courses and webinars. Some of the webinars are free, some are paid. We have 4 now online courses that we offer. And that's sort of using technology to enhance access to justice. So if somebody either can't afford us or they want piecemeal information, we are using online courses to help fill some of that gap and also remove myself a little bit from the hamster wheel. The courses are not for everybody. Some people prefer the hand-holding and the budget isn't a factor, but there are some things you can do and you have the freedom to do when you run your own practice, to think about digital downloads or membership or other ways to complement your practice, where you can use technology to be a little bit one-to-many rather than everything having to be one-to-one.
Thank you so much for that, Lisa. Just because you're talking about the topic right now, we did have a question about, running Google ads or Facebook ads, TikTok, as you kind of mentioned. Do you think that would be a best return on investment for getting clients?
My experience with Google ads was that when I turned them off, I didn't notice a difference, but I think some people have amazing results. And it also depends so much on who your client is. So before, when Amy mentioned your ideal client, I think that helps answer the question. And I find I have more than one avatar, more than one ideal client. For my family caregiver services, that includes mental health law, guardianship. That's so different than surrogacy. I have different clients. And so I have more than one, but I think you can help answer that question for yourself if you think about that client journey of what are they researching in the beginning? So is it Airbnb? I might want to buy a property for Airbnb. Maybe they find a blog, and that's a blog on a real estate lawyer's website. So early in the client journey, if they're searching online, maybe a blog would be a good fit. I found for fertility law, they're sort of some of the younger clients, people donating eggs tend to be younger. For me, TikTok is where I might have some of my content because they're on TikTok. So I don't think there's a one size fits all. I think it goes back to that, who's your client question, and then where are they showing up? And if you can think about the client journey, that can help. Where are they doing their research at the early stage? Ideally, they will find you before they even need you. I call it family health law. I made that up. No one's Googling that. So I had to think about what problems are people typing into the search bar on Google, and let me make those problems the topics of my blogs, the topics of my YouTube videos. So their question leads them to me. So if you think about the steps along the way of what are they searching and what problems, that might help answer the question of where to post your content and what kind of content to post.
Oh, thank you so much. And just because we're talking about the topic of technology, and this could be open for any of the speakers, would you say that the fax is important today, like the use of faxes now with the virtual office, or is there other ways now than just your traditional ways of how we used to receive faxes? Is it by email now? What is your experience with that?
I personally had a VoIP phone provider that came with fax. We recently switched over just to reduce the cost. They were increasing their fees. We thought, let's go for something a little more modern and cost effective. It didn't have fax. What we found is there are some fax providers online where it's pay per use. And so since we don't send tons of faxes, it's just more of a pay per use kind of model. So we have access to fax. Nobody sends us faxes. We only have them outgoing. So that works for us. So that way we kind of put $20 in an account, and that's going to last us for probably more than a year. But I'd say it depends on your practice and how counsel communicate. For us, doctors and hospitals tend to receive fax, so we still need a way to send them out. But if you go over a year without using it, maybe you don't need it.
Thank you so much for that, Lisa. That was really interesting. A lot of definitely educational points there. I don't know if Paula or Amy or Vuya, you want to add anything to the technology aspect of it before we start answering some questions?
Yes, I have. I use a VoIP phone and fax. So it's the same company. And then the phone is your desk phone that works pretty well and is connected to your Wi-Fi. And then your fax going out, incoming faxes, you get it in your email. And then if you want to send a fax, you just scan the documents and then you go to your dashboard and then send it out. So that has worked perfectly well for me. So I receive faxes, I send out faxes, and then emails and all of that. And then when they're sending you a fax, it comes into your email attached to it. And then if they're leaving you a voice message, it comes into your email as well as an MP4 file. So all of those works pretty well for me. And also I have a server, and this was before COVID, that I've maintained it. Has a lot of room, 2 terabytes, whatever. And then you can sign into the server at your office located physically. I have a backup. I have, if power went out, there's the backup thing that will keep it running well. So you can access it. You give it different access level by password for you, for your bookkeeper, your assistant, another lawyer working on a file with you. So when you go in there, you only have access to your level of access that you get with your password. And then you can log into it using maybe TeamViewer. If TeamViewer is not working well, then you can use, I use something called VNC. And with that, I can log in wherever I'm at. Even if I'm overseas, I can log in as long as I have Wi-Fi, and I can work on files in my office. And then if I'm printing off something, I can download it to my laptop, print off from it, or maybe print it off and it's in my office. So when I get there, there is no possibility of me forgetting. It's right there on my printer. I pick it up and then I can work on it. But like someone, I think Paula said earlier, I still do paper, print stuff and read. I like to print off my stuff and read, just the old habit that doesn't go away, so.
Thank you so much for that. Sorry.
Tina, I'm trying to stay on top of the questions and answers
Same.
here. I wanted to say we have a lot of people that are asking about technology, fax machines, etc. I want to let you know that after this webinar, provided that you checked the little box that says we may contact you after the webinar, we're going to email you some materials, the replay. And courtesy of Amy Grubin Lawyerist, we're also going to be offering a tech field guide. So I know we didn't get to a lot of your specific questions today. Obviously, we could have an entire series of webinars on this topic. Tina, should we start hitting the Q&A now since we
Oh yeah, some of these questions I've actually been asking from the Q&A.
Okay.
So there's actually another question here that'll be open for everyone to kind of speak here. I'm just gonna quickly get to it. Give me 1 second here.
Tina,
Okay, it's basically a question that, how you guys talk about being a lawyer and everyone comes up to you asking questions. Somebody here is asking, how can I protect my family time and educate people from my community to understand the boundaries but keep a friendly relationship at the same time? So when people come ask you for free advice, how would you approach that?
I think
And this is open for anybody, yeah.
I think it's all about the way you do it. I've gotten myself out of some questions and not given legal advice without establishing, a clientship type thing by saying, well, by the rules, I'm not really able to get into all of this. Why not call me or come to my office and so on? So you can do that.
Yeah, I agree. You can, have a quick, give them the gist, kind of the lay of the land, but then say, hey, give me your email address. I'll send you an email with a link to my calendar and you can book a call or whatever your intake is, so they can get into your system that way. But I wouldn't go about giving out free advice. So you can protect that family time like that person mentioned.
Okay, the next question I have here are there any thoughts of use of practice management softwares? Any recommendations from any of you guys?
Well, I think it's gonna depend on what works for you. I'm presently using Clio, but I've used others in the past, and it goes into, I think when we look at scaling in the terms of the content of this webinar, it's scaling into a virtual practice. And like I said at the beginning, I think for me, it's like a dual, it's a bit of the two. It's try to keep up with the times, but also focus on who my clientele is. And even though it sounds great to build a complete virtual practice, you start introducing tools that work for you in building up, and whether that means reaching for new clients, connecting with other individuals. But in terms of my client management software, we use that. The downside to it is that then how do you deal with your business side of it? So here at the office right now, we integrate it with QuickBooks to manage the the business portion of it, if that makes sense. But before I hand it over, I know you have other questions. I just really wanted to quickly jump in about like networking and doing other things and doing pro bono. With saying no comes a lot of like figuring out what works for you and scaling a virtual practice or even your business as it is. A lot of it has also been through pro bono work that I do. So I actually volunteer twice a month in 2 different settings. One, like women's cause is a big thing close to my heart. So I give free pro bono. I run a clinic in with the Women's Center of Halton. I've been involved with them for 3-4 years, and it's become virtual because they went virtual. So it's like I've scaled my business that way. Sometimes it just says pro bono, or it results in a file, or with other community programs, I go and I do talks, and it's how you build. And not everything can be virtual, even though today you can give a speech like we're doing today in a community and build a community this way. I'll plug in about building. I know when you start your practice doing that mentorship and working with other lawyers, I will say I am so blessed to be part of the different associations that the immigration bar offers. Everybody's great. And so if you're even trying something new, like reach out, do your homework first, like Vasui said, like it goes a long way, and then I find like the immigration bar for me, I love everybody. They're great. They're amazing. I always go to them and they always welcome answers. And if they don't know, they'll be like, go ask this person. So it's a great community. You can really build a community as you build your practice, whether it's a virtual, physical, or combination of both.
Thank you so much, Paula. Does anybody else want to answer that question, or can we move on to the next question?
Yeah, personally don't use my practice management is not completely virtual. However, some of my friends use Leap and they go completely virtual. Some of them don't have physical files anymore. And then I've always used PC Law for my accounting and all of that. And I learned it at the beginning. So that way I can put in my billing so I don't miss or forget anything. So it takes a while to learn, but it became very helpful. Mind you, I still have a bookkeeper that will do my reconciliation and all of that at the end of the month, but I can do some stuff with it myself.
Thank you so much. What do you guys think about having a virtual assistant? That was another question here as well. Or if any of you have one. Juliana,
I have one. I
Yeah.
can't do anything without a virtual assistant. And I find people I work with, getting that first team member is the hardest part of scaling. And that's exactly where I help people with my employment law practice. Who jumped in? Who wanted to talk about that?
I can share some thoughts on that. So one thing about hiring admin is it can be really scary when you're on your own and you have this other overhead. So one tip that I was given early on that I really embraced was leveraging students. So there are law clerk co-op programs, paralegal co-op programs, high school co-op programs, and I took great advantage of those programs over the years. And I'll go back to my comment before, the more you have systems and templates and checklists, the more they can hit the ground running and be useful to you and get a great experience as well. So before jumping into actually hiring anybody, I found students help me fill some of those gaps. There were some programs I had a student 2 days a week full time, Thursdays and Fridays. I had labor that I did not have to pay for, and she got a great law clerk experience. And so that's just kind of a nice stepping stone. But definitely I've learned having administrative help is hugely helpful. And one of my greatest mistakes that I made was hiring in the wrong order. I think admin can be great. And maybe you can't have full-time in the beginning, but you can do part-time and ease into it. But the better delegator you are, the more you will get out of that. You can't expect necessarily someone to just hit the ground running. So you can get some of the groundwork laid in advance. And that's where I found students helpful, because it was like a trial run for having an employee.
Thank you so much for that, Lisa. I think we'll have time for at least one more question. This question is, what are your thoughts on building or outsourcing specific tasks or functions to third parties to help with your practice? And this is open to anyone, Paula or Amy, Busui, or Lisa.
I haven't done that, but I've dealt with lawyers that use that, for example, real estate transactions. They have conveyancers So I don't really know how that works or how you pay them, but they will outsource everything to them. The lawyer will just look it over and complete the deal. Even to the point of withdrawing money or depositing money into the other lawyer's trust account for a transaction. I've found that they've used third party to do that.
Yeah, like I know that they to help assist with the closing to be done on time or saving time to do the actual title search, conveyancers can do that. Anyone else?
Part of my practice when I was practicing was as a freelance lawyer. And so if lawyers were going on vacation or going on maternity leave or were super swamped, they would outsource their work to me. So I would do the work on a contract basis for them. So kind of step in, do the work, help them kind of get above water or come back from vacation. So that it comes down to having a really clear contract, hiring someone you trust, making sure you understand, is that lawyer you're hiring going to be dealing directly with clients? Are they dealing with you? You know, are they on your system? So there's a lot of different things to think about there. Flex Legal is a really great organization that has a whole bunch of freelance lawyers as well across Canada. So there's a lot of different ways that you can do it as a practicing lawyer.
Thank you so much, Amy. Okay, so we're actually not going to have enough time to finish all the questions, but we will have a continued webinar coming up in the next couple of weeks. But don't forget to check your inbox because there will be a couple of different materials that'll be sent to you guys. Okay, so keep a lookout for that. And thank you so much to all the
Thank you so much.
speakers
Yeah.
for joining us today and taking the time to, to share your expertise and skills in this area.
And all the questions, everyone, thank you for coming and spending your lunch hour with us and participating so much. We got way more questions than we thought we would. So clearly we're going to be doing some follow-up. In terms of getting in touch with the panelists, I can only speak for myself, but do feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. And the people that are looking for networks, I put a couple names in the chat. So LexisNexis Canada, you have your hand up. Okay, I think we're done. Thank you again to the speakers. We could have spent a day on this and you were so generous with your time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks so much.